Welcome to the milk bar. 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 Welcome to the milk bar.
Welcome along to episode 635 of the Milk Bar. Jason Forrest here with you as ever. And coming up on the show this week, we hear about the film Flatland, a South African-based Western from its writer and director Jenna Bass. She'll be on the line for that one. Plus, we'll be having a bit of word or two with David Emanuel, obviously half of the team who brought Diana's wedding dress to the stage in 1981. Tells you how you can afford your wedding during 2021 as we look at ways of saving up and making sure you get some top tips for wedding couture. On top of that, we'll be having a bit of a natter with Shereen Murphy. She's, of course, from Emerdale fame, talking about the frozen food and the way that's become much more of a staple for many families over the last 18 months. Plus, on top of that, we're having a natter with Shaun Hartman. He is in Blackadder II, starring as Blackadder himself. It's on at the Crescent this week, so he'll be telling you how you can get yourself down there. Runs through into September as well. Plus, on top of that, we've got music from Harper and Hubble and Mostly Autumn. That's all on the way on the show this week. From the 25th of August through to the 4th of September, Blackadder II is on stage at the Crescent in Brum. Blackadder himself joins me now. It is Shaun Hartman. Hello, sir.
Hello, Jason. How are you?
I'm all right. I trust everything is going to plan in your world.
Yeah, I think so. We did the tech run yesterday over at the Crescent. Did it from start to finish, and we're all still alive.
And you know all the words, which is helpful.
Yes, yeah, that's another good sign. There were no scripts. There will be no scripts on the night, in the words of Shereen Murphy.
So, Blackadder 2, which means there has been a Blackadder 1, but as with all the Blackadder series, you could drop in when it was the telly stuff. This is a stage play, and obviously you have the titular role, which means you're basically either emulating Rowan Atkinson or playing it in your own right. How does it work? Because you're way too good looking to be Rowan Atkinson.
Oh, well, I take that as a huge compliment. He's a good looking guy, James.
He's always been a bit novelty. That's how he ended up doing this stuff in the first place. I'm sure he wouldn't mind us saying that.
I'm sure he wouldn't. He seems like a nice guy. It's a weird one in terms of where you draw the line of, are you doing an impression versus are you doing your own interpretation of it? Because on the one hand, you don't want to do a Rowan Atkinson impression and just pale in comparison to Rowan Atkinson. And you also don't want to, people who are coming to see Blackadder live on the stage, they want to kind of hear the greatest hits. They don't want people to kind of challenge the idea of what Blackadder could be. People want the classic. So it's a hard line to toe. Luckily for me, my impression of Rowan Atkinson is so bad that it sounds like I'm doing my own thing with it, but I'm not at all. I'm just doing a terrible impression.
But the thing, you've got a script, you've got an amazing script, you've got some of the best jokes on the planet, and you've got a wonderful scenario to work your way through. So you're already on a winner there. You put into that fantastic acting abilities, your comedy timing, and having seen you in stuff, let's stop at stuff in the past, then I know that when I saw you were doing that, I thought, yeah, that fits.
Yeah, a few people have said that, when I say, I'm auditioning for Blackadder, they're just, from a few people, there just seemed to be an immediate nod of, yes, that will be perfect. And I take that as a huge compliment, but I think it's also because I've been such a huge fan of the show since I was a kid. I think that's true of most of the cast as well. And you're right, it is in terms of scripts. There's no, it's on a plate for you really. If you get Blackadder wrong, then there's something seriously wrong with you. It's fun, it's easy. The rest of the cast are great. The characters are great. It's a very fun show to be a part of.
Okay, for those who are uneducated, give us a scenario that sets the scene for Blackadder 2.
Okay, so Blackadder 2 is set during the Elizabethan age. Blackadder is, he's the typical kind of sarcastic, eye-rolling kind of. He's high, he's upper class, but he's not quite at the level that he wants to be. He's just one rung below, the sort of the royalty that he works for. but the royalty that he works for, Queen Elizabeth II and her right-hand man Melchett, they are kind of useless, stupid people, and his servants, Percy and Baldric, are useless, stupid people. Chaos and hilarity ensues. My favorite episode, in terms of setting up a scenario, my favorite episode is that the one where Blackadder challenges Melchett to a drinking competition at his house on the same night that he has accidentally invited his aunt and uncle to his house, who are the two biggest kind of fanatical Puritans in England. So you've got beer throwing and broken furniture in one room, and you've got a very formal dinner party in the next room. It's that classic kind of sitcom, two parties at once, main characters running in from one room to the other. Hilarity and farce. It's madness, but it's so much fun.
And even more fun for the fact it's live on stage, and it has to go right every time you do it, or at least wrong in a way which is going to make it even funnier.
Yeah, no pressure, Jason. Thank you for that. No, you're absolutely right. One of the challenging things about the process actually has been there are so many moments in the show where the camera cuts from one actor to the other, and you, as the actor, are sort of stood on stage thinking, what did Rowan Atkinson do during the show during this point? I don't know, because the camera was always on Hugh Laurie or whoever it was. So you do have to find, it isn't a carbon copy of the show in the sense that you do have to find those kind of theatrical ways to play certain moments where they didn't do it on the telly show. So it's a good mix of the great script from the 80s and kind of the theatrical visuals.
Yeah. So it works basically, and we wouldn't expect anything any different. It sounds like it's going to be awesome, and so basically you have your Baldric, you have all the other characters who, again, in some ways, in the telly show, we knew it was Hugh Laurie playing a part, and any of the other cast that were in there. So it's not necessarily impressions, but it's you playing something they played in a way in which they played it because they were them.
Absolutely, yeah. It's not impressions in a sense, but it's not impressions, but the characters are so iconic.
Mm-hmm.
You could go to a pub in the UK on any kind of Saturday night, pre-COVID anyway, and just sort of you overhear conversations between British people talking about Blackadder, and everybody's got a Queenie impression or a Nursey impression or a Baldric impression. It's just one of those things. It's kind of, it's in our sort of DNA really, and so add that to the fact that a bunch of very talented people came to audition for this show, and it's a brilliant cast, and it's as I say, it's an iconic script.
And so clearly there is a cunning plan to make sure this works. It all gets going on Wednesday the 25th. I'll tell you, you haven't done that. I had to do that. So I thought you were going to do that one at some point.
Yes, very good, very good.
So that's all happening. Tickets are available via the Crescent Theatre's website. Anything else we need to know?
It's brilliant. That's all you need to know. I should say on the Tuesday evening of the run, there is going to be a socially distanced performance for anybody kind of apprehensive about kind of post-lockdown theatre. Tuesday the 31st of August would be our socially distanced performance of the run.
Okay, so check all that out. Book your tickets for that one. Obviously, limited availability that night. You can fill them to the Crescent of the Rafters, and the Crescent's a lovely theatre. It's well worth getting to. Absolutely brilliant site to do it. And I think that stage is going to suit it so well. And as I say, just based on Shaun, it's going to be amazing because he's a top fellow. You will enjoy his performance. Mr. Hartman, thank you for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on stage at the Crescent from the 25th of August right the way through to the 4th of September.
Thank you very much, Mr. Forrest. I will see you there.
For more than 70 years, Birdseye have been tantalising the taste buds of families across the UK. And with 40% more people buying frozen food since lockdown has begun, there's been changes in our diet, but it's all been for the good. To tell us more, I'm joined now by Lauren Woodley from Birdseye and from Emerdale, a busy mum, and everything else that you've seen her doing. It is Shereen Murphy. Good afternoon to you all.
Afternoon.
Hello.
Right, so first of all, I mean, Sherry, being a busy mother, as well as having the work that you do, frozen food's an absolute godsend, isn't it? But it's also got all that nutrition that your family want and love.
Absolutely. And I think there's been like this weird myth around frozen food for quite a while. And obviously since the pandemic, you know, people have been a bit more, you couldn't go out to the shops as often as, you know, as you normally would. So I think a lot of people did go back to frozen food, but, you know, it is super nutritious. And for me, as a mum of four, with probably as they were all growing up, fussy eaters, I could always rely on fish fingers in my freezer. You know, it's one of the staples of my freezer: fish fingers, frozen chips, ice cream, and peas.
That sounds like a magical meal in itself. But I mean, so you've got the goodness, the peas, the fish fingers have got all the nutrients in there. The frozen chips are so much better for you than the ones you get from the chip shop because they contain so much less fat. And I'm doing Lauren's job here, so I'll shut up and let her talk.
Absolutely, Jason, you're completely right. Frozen chips are a lot healthier than those you get from the chip shop. So yeah, frozen chips are definitely not an unhealthy choice anymore. They've got nice healthy fats on them, and potatoes are a great source of energy, especially for kids running around in the evenings.
And there's vitamin C in there too. But the frozen veg is the main source of that sort of thing. And it cuts down on food waste too.
Absolutely. So that's one of the great benefits of frozen. So people moving to frozen since the pandemic has been beneficial, I think, for people's convenience, for saving money, but also in-home food waste is massively reduced by frozen food because if we don't use all of it, just pop it back in the freezer. So it's also a really nice sustainable option as people are more engaged now with their activities at home and being more sustainable.
Yeah, and it widens the options of things that are available. I mean, and Sherry, when it comes to having 4 kids, that sounds like it possibly 5 different meals you're having to prepare.
Oh, listen, let me tell you, over the years, I have I've been known to cook up lots of different meals of an evening. So that's why, as a parent, sometimes if you've had a busy day at work, you know, you just want to know what you're going to be giving your kids at, you know, when it comes to tea time. And like I said, you know, fish fingers, chips and peas is a firm favorite. You know, I do make fish finger sandwiches as well, which we absolutely love.
Yeah, you can't go wrong with a fish finger sandwich.
You can't. I mean, you can fancy them up and make them slightly, you know, adult friendly.
You mean put ketchup on them?
Yeah. That's correct. Or a bit of rocket instead of iceberg lettuce. But, you know, but kids also love that. It's a great little snack, you know, at lunchtime, especially in the school holidays. I'm always looking for things to feed the kids because they're constantly hungry. So I think it's just so handy, and as a busy parent, to make sure your freezer is stocked with them and knowing that you are giving your kids good food.
And Lauren, it is all about getting a wide range of nutrition. And there's things like the oils in fish will be really good for the growing kids. And you've got all those different options. And I say with Bird's Eye's range of stuff, I mean, everything. I mean, from the chicken nuggets through the fish family and everything else that you produce, there is something for everybody there, however fussy they are.
Absolutely. So we really pride ourselves in the fact we've got this really wide range that should really appeal to all members of all families. And the great thing is when feeding families with frozen food, you have the nutrients locked in. As you said, all the different types of foods we sell, but especially fish, really, really healthy foods that we should all be trying to eat more of. We should be having at least 2 portions of fish a week. And frozen fish is wonderful because it has those nutrients locked in. So it's packed with protein. It provides minerals that we all need to kind of grow big and strong. Important for kids, but also important for adults as well. So the freezer really does help to lock in those nutrients and lock in that goodness, which I think is really important for parents when they're feeding their families, as well as when they're feeding themselves as well.
Mm-hmm. And it's so nice to have a brand which is so well known that is always classed as healthy. Everyone's grown up seeing Captain Birdseye on TV, and
Yeah.
he's stayed with us in a number of iterations over the years. And it's having that sort of a character where there is no question, is there? It is all just good food.
Absolutely. It stands for quality. It stands for freshness, healthiness. I think for a lot of us, our first taste of fish was the humble fish finger. And as Sheree says, fish finger sandwich is an absolute classic. It's one of my favourite meals as well. And it's healthy, which is wonderful because it tastes so good you wouldn't expect it to be.
And of course, your fish is sourced sustainably too.
Absolutely, yes. So sustainable fishing is really important. Bird's Eye was one of the founders of the MSC around 20 years ago. So sustainable catching of fish, sustainable sourcing has been really important. It's part of our DNA really, and has been for years now. Okay. So MSC, ASC, always checking labels to make sure you're choosing sustainably sourced fish. It's really important.
And Sheree, when it comes down to the family food, I mean, you've talked about the fish fingers and that side of it, but it is just not only the convenience, but also you don't have to worry either, do you?
Exactly. And I think, especially from a cost side of it, pre pandemic, I would probably pop to the shop sort of every other day and just buy, a lot of fresh stuff. But sometimes when you're working all day, you come home and you sort of think, oh, can I be bothered to put together, a meal from scratch, which I do a lot, but it's always nice to know that you have options in your freezer. And we was looking at a survey, 60% of people saved up to £90 a month by shopping frozen food. So that's a massive amount in people's pockets at the end of every month.
Yeah, but I'm sure you do the same as I do. The frozen stuff is an ingredient as part of a meal as well. The whole thing doesn't have to come out of the freezer. It's part of it.
I know sometimes I'll make my own, mash to go with the fish fingers instead of using frozen chips. So you can mix things up, do a bit of both, which is good.
And so you talked about the posh meals. What do you think is the poshest meal you've ever created out of the freezer? And I'm not just talking rocket. Where have you gone? Come on.
Oh, the posh shit. Oh God, let me think.
Because you're classy, aren't you?
I'm very classy. The girl from Hackney always stays classy. No, I suppose it is just mixing stuff up with, some maybe breaded chicken, and then I'll make a nice little sauce on the side to go with it, a little homemade sauce, and like you say, a posh salad or something. But no, you can definitely mix things up with frozen food, and frozen food is just as posh as regular food, I have to say.
Well, yeah, it is, and the quality's there, and the quality's locked in when you put it in the freezer.
Absolutely, it's locked in, and that's the great thing. If you think about especially fish again, we catch it, we freeze it immediately, it locks in all that lovely flavour, taste, nutrients. 34% of people we found in our recent Bird's Eye survey think that fish loses its flavour when it's been frozen. It's not the case. It tastes just as fresh as when it was pulled out of the sea.
And because of the way fresh fish is actually caught, often it can be frozen before it gets to the fresh fish counter.
Absolutely. So generally, if you think about those big barges that are catching fish in a sustainable way, the fish are frozen on the ship, they're frozen straight away on land, and then they're transported to, in this case, the UK, to be sold on fresh fish counters and then defrosted. So absolutely, freezing fish is the best way to make sure that it stays as fresh as possible for when it's sold.
Yeah, and that fresh fish that's been frozen then arrives even fresher to us in the freezer than it would do if it's on the fresh fish counter.
Absolutely.
Are there any more tongue twisters we can throw at ourselves as we talk about this one? I tell you what, it's always fun getting the web address. Who's going to do that one for me?
I'll go for it. I'll do it. So if people want to know more about the full product range from Bird's Eye, if they want to learn more about nutrition from our nutrition hub, or they want some fantastic recipe inspiration, they head to birdseye.co.uk. There's loads of information on there to help families and help parents cook delicious meals and also learn about nutrition as well. And
Sheree, is it all round to yours for a fish finger sandwich and maybe some rocket on it as well?
Absolutely.
Okay, we'll do that now we're allowed to. Shereen Murphy and Lauren Woodley, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, Jason.
Harper and Hubble have some brand new music for us. They're quite prolific when it comes to producing this stuff. Let's see whether the last 18 months has slowed them down any. Andy and Paul join me now. Hi, lads.
Oh yeah.
Right, so who's going to be spokesperson on the name of the latest work? Who's volunteering?
We finally came up with the title of Roads We Take.
Mm-hmm.
Not the roads we take, but just roads we take.
Okay, so we got a whole album of road-related stories, or?
No. Obviously, the lockdown has got us all thinking about stuff and given us a lot more time to reflect on things, as we've all had over the last 18 months. We had a few working titles kicking around, but Roads We Take, it's kind of about, how people meet, and it's not just about particularly road trips, although there are a couple of tracks relating to that, like the title track, Breezing. But a lot of it is about interrelationships, about how people, meet, the fascinating things about that, how people get together and how different events change things, I suppose. And there's quite a few more serious things on this album, a bit more serious topics. We've introduced a new writer, John, who's a lyricist, who is a friend of mine and Andy's, and that's given us a different kind of perspective on the music. But I wouldn't want to give the impression that it's an overly serious. There's some serious kind of subject matter on it, but we'd tie that up in hopefully some good melodic stuff, and and try and keep it interesting and mix it up a bit. But there are kind of a few serious themes on the album. So sort of a different kind of direction for us, slightly maybe than the last couple.
And have you started performing any of this live out and about yet, or have you limited that just at the moment because of the ongoing situation?
Well, we're more producers than recording than playing live anyway. I mean, as you can tell, we're a bit long in the tooth these days.
Oh, you speak for yourself, man.
Oh, go on, then I'll speak for myself. Yeah, I'm getting old. And to do live performances, we'd actually have to create a rather large band, if you like.
Well, yeah, because there's a lot of layers to your music, and having seen you do an acoustic set for me back, it must be the best part of 5 years ago now. Then we had you in and performing that for us. Yeah. You had to do some work to get it to the sort of sound that you wanted, even then.
That's right. I mean, unless we start using backing tracks, we could go out and do backing tracks.
I mean, that's possible. I mean, some of our stuff works stripped down as well. I mean, that's another option. Because a lot of it formulates from acoustic guitar anyway. I mean, not all of it, but some of it, is a stripped back version, and then we layer it up. So as Andy quite rightly says, for us to go out and perform that stuff live, we'd need to add at least a few guys and get a band together, which isn't beyond the realms of possibility. But it might be worth even considering, like you alluded to a few years back when we came in and did the session. Maybe some stripped back versions of the stuff could work as well. And just try it like that, because it's what they call it, unplugged these days, don't they, or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of stuff. So that's another option.
Yeah, and it would be interesting to maybe have an album of, effectively the greatest hits and your favourite tracks off each of the pieces you've done so far, done in a very different way. I mean, that would be one to enjoy, and to be able to then bring that to a stage. And I think it requires an intimate gig, doesn't it? Really, the way that would work. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah, and I think we could make it work. And I think certainly some of the stuff I tend to bring to the table, as I say, tends to be written more acoustic-y kind of initially anyway. I mean, Andy's stuff is more keyboard based, so that's but again, that could be transposed into like, or Andy could play a bit of keyboards live. So I mean, it would be something we'd be interested in looking at. But let's certainly now we're in a position that we can actually go and play live again anyway, like everybody else. I've been able to do a fat lot anyway for the last, as we know, for the last 18 months, really.
No, but you're just sitting there communicating, putting music together, and this brings us an album of, say, people, situations, and something which, again, I find you quite thought-provoking as well. If you actually bother listening to the words, which I know a lot of people don't do in music, but if you do, then there's a lot there, isn't there?
Yeah, there is, isn't there? And I think, and again, as I said, like John, who writes, who we've known for a good number of years, and we thought it would be nice to add a different perspective to the work this time. And John's lyrics are probably a little bit more subjective and maybe a little bit more open to interpretation, maybe, but that's a good thing, because I think whatever you take from the song really is up to you. I mean, if we can get the main message across. But if it reminds you of a time or a place or something in your life, then I think that's job done with songwriting. Really, I think that's really what it's all about. So I mean, so hopefully it's a kind of it's a Harper album, but with a little bit of a different twist maybe to the last one.
But there is an awful lot of back catalogue out there as well, and I think it's nice to have the sort of a progression in time, and you can hear the way in which things have changed in the music as collaborators come in and go, and the way that works. So if someone's looking to find out the full back catalogue, remind me how many albums it is.
Well, this is the actual third album for Harper and Hubble Music. You might find it as HNH Music, but this one has finally come out as Harper and Hubble Music. The website is hnhmusic.com. So that's where the HNH really came from in the first place.
We have actually, Andy's quite right, but we've actually done 4 albums, because the first album was under Andy's Relax Listen banner, which was Relax Listen with Friends. And that never kind of, because Andy still runs his Relaxed Listen, obviously, with what we're doing, because that was the forerunner to what we're now doing. But the Relaxed Listen album with friends, actually, you're speaking about stuff about rehashing, and we've discussed about the possibility of bringing that onto the H&H platform. There's some songs on that I think we could certainly still standing up from a few. Was that first album in 2015, I think. But we've talked about rehashing some of those and re-recording with some new material as well. That a few of them might appear on whatever the next project is. Probably start in September.
Well, it's constantly evolving, always something going on, and we have a video that we're going to that goes alongside the latest release. So, what is it we're going to hear now?
Right, the track is actually this was the first idea of the title for this album, and it's a track called "Island in the City." John wrote the lyrics for this track, so "Island in the City."
Okay, so we'll take a listen. Meanwhile, we've already know it's H&H Music, HNH Music, and what are we sticking the end at .com?
Yeah, .com.
And we can get the info that way. Are you all over TikTok and Instagram as well, or have you not ventured out that far?
We're just starting to, but...
okay, I want to see you doing some dances on TikTok then, that'll be good.
I got a certificate for the Velita, but that's about it.
But you've got a Facebook page there, haven't you? So people can find you on there.
Yeah, and our YouTube channel's up and running as well, isn't it?
Yeah. And, the website actually steers you towards all our social media as well.
So get it from hnhmusic.com. You can check it out that way. Well, Andy and Paul, other way around, Paul and Andy Harper, well, thank you for joining us.
Thanks very much for having us.
Thank you for having us on. Cheers. All the best.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Cheers.
With 61% of people believing the couple should pay for weddings, this can make the budget a little tight. How much should we spend on all the different elements? To tell us more, I'm joined now by designer and TV presenter David Emanuel and Kevin Manford, money expert. Good afternoon.
Yes, good afternoon to you.
So first of all, I mean, David, tell us a bit about this research, because you know a thing or two about weddings. You were involved in the biggest wedding imaginable in the 80s with the designing of Princess Diana's dress, which is still iconic to this day. So where do we go to? How do we start? Because you may not have the budget that Charles and Di had.
No, that would be off the scale, obviously. But the average Brit thinks, the British people think, they need to set aside £26,300 for their dream wedding.
Mm-hmm.
Awful lot of money, and you can't suddenly decide. I mean, so you've got to plan. I mean, the whole purpose of this with Raising UK is to try and plan and save for your big day, if that's your dream. But yeah, there are ways around it. I mean, it sounds an extraordinary amount of money, because the average wedding dress I consult for a bridal company is between 1,000 and 1,500. Now that's just the gown. Then you've got the veil, then you've got the headdress and the shoes and the bouquet, and so it really adds up. And then of course you've got the venue. And I know at the moment, because of the pandemic, some brides have cancelled their having to move their wedding three times.
Mm-hmm.
And you know, if you put a deposit down, I mean, it all clocks up very easily. But then 23% of the survey with Raising UK, 23% think we should stick to the traditional bride's family should pay. Well, that's traditional. Tradition is now gone, I think, because everything is thrown up in the air, and it really is an expensive operation.
Absolutely.
But you can cut corners. Well, one thing I was going to suggest, you know, when I see a bride, I say, right, darling, and if she's itching to go just a bit more to spend on the dress, I say, okay, if you want to stretch, that's fine, but cut down the coffees. Don't go to these very smart coffee shops and have coffees with your girlfriends all the time, or stop having cocktails. Save the money if that's what you want. You can't have everything. And trying to get them, I mean, it's not just the wedding. If you think of £26,300, that could be a deposit on your flat or house.
Yeah.
So it's quite a serious business, you know. So you can understand why people just run off to Vegas and get married quick. You can understand that.
But even that requires some planning and some finances. But when you look at it as well, I mean, the wedding ring and the engagement ring, they're more another expense that you've got. When it comes to the engagement ring, the sort of average, I think they're saying something like 3 months' salary should feel like the right amount to spend. Now, that still sounds like a lot of money.
It does. I mean, and that's generally for the man to find. So he'd better stop going to the pub, I think, and start saving.
With all of these pressures on us, Kevin, obviously we need to save. Raisin have got accounts to do that. And when it comes to putting a bit away each month, there's lots of ways of approaching that, aren't there? As David's already said, cut down on the coffees, avoid the cocktails. But those little things really do add up.
Yes, through Raisin, we've undertaken a fair amount of research, particularly during lockdown. And you may have be aware, but the savings ratio, so the amount we save versus the amount we earn, has gone up substantially. And there's a number of reasons for this. I think first and foremost, as David alluded to, we've stopped spending on unnecessary items. I think people have also realised that they needed some emergency funds. But I think we are getting back into savings habits now, which effectively means we're putting money aside for major purchases. Now, whether that be the car, the holiday, the deposit on an apartment, or of course the wedding. I think planning ahead, trying not to take the romantic element out of it, but I think planning ahead is crucial. And I think what we should do is look to get the most of our savings accounts. For people that can lock money away for 1 year, the interest rate is twice what it was back in April. So things are improving. But we have to be active. We have to be looking at switching around and putting our money to its best use. And clearly through raisin.co.uk, that's one of the areas that we focus on.
Mm-hmm. And obviously it all adds up, because looking at these figures again, and David, when we're looking £200 to have a guest at your wedding. Now, lockdown and everything that's been going on has meant there were fewer people at weddings, which was a huge cost saving, but everyone wants a lavish party now. So is 200 quid going to cover it?
No, in a word, I wouldn't think. The only thing I noticed, I was at a wedding recently, and it was an open bar. So the couple were, you know, you could have any drink you want. That was kind of crazy. Because, you know, people, instead of having a beer, they'll have a double scotch. You know, and you're thinking, hang on, that's rude. That's taken advantage. And yeah, I mean, there's lots of things to think about. I mean, but we did, of course, at the beginning of this pandemic, have the excuse that you could only have, 30 people at a wedding. Then it went down, then it's gone up. Now I think it's open. You can have as many as you like. So you've got to watch the pennies. You really have. It's an expensive operation.
Absolutely, and it isn't cheap, and it's about getting value out of that day, because you are making memories. You don't want to scrimp, but you've got to not have to live with the burden of it afterwards. Saving first is important.
Well, regarding the gown, everybody wants to know about the gown. You can hire a wedding dress these days, right? Or I recently did a TV show where I visited an Oxfam. Wait for this, an Oxfam. Some of the around the country Oxfam shops have bridal sections. And you might be able to pick up a £2,000 dress for £200. And the beauty of that is people have donated them, manufacturers have given it to Oxfam, so it's going to a very good cause. But you can wear the dress and you can hand it back to Oxfam, they'll dry clean it. And then, so, I mean, there are ways around it. There are.
And I mean, in your show, you say yes to the dress as well. I mean, you've experienced even more of what goes on when it comes to getting the dress. And I mean, you know how to design a wedding dress, don't you?
Yes, I think so.
I think that's pretty well documented.
It has been known, yes.
So when it comes to it, maybe higher, because when people have obviously donated to Oxfam and other charity shops as well, and that's because you have the dress, you have it for the day, and then it kind of just sits in a wardrobe, doesn't it? Unless it's one of yours, then it goes on display in the V&A. But everybody else's, it's in a wardrobe.
Yeah. Well, I think the one thing about that charity shop wedding dresses is you can wear it for the day. You can enjoy it. Don't have to worry. You don't have sleepless nights. Can I afford it? You can, because they're very affordable. But then equally, then after you've worn it, give it back to the store and they can resell it. And it's all for a very good cause.
So there's good ways of getting around it and spending that money wisely. And again, it is about the way in which we save. Kevin, any more tips for us?
No, I think, as I say, get into good habits. I've seen people often look to save whatever's left at the end of the month. What you should do is work back from the amount you think you need to spend, the period in which you've got to save in, and make sure that you put that money aside. But yeah, I think, we are in unprecedented times. I guess now, because of the lockdown, there's going to be more and more people rushing to have that big day. And let's hope that they can get the balance right between how much they spend and obviously the enjoyment and memories that they create.
Absolutely. It's all about making those memories. And that can be done at a budget. It doesn't have to be about the expense. But if you can afford it, enjoy it. If you can't, don't pressure yourself. Still make sure you have that big day in an enjoyable, cost-effective way, and follow a man whose advice is absolutely essential when it comes to wedding dresses, David Emanuel, and go second-hand if you need to. And they say, if you buy second-hand, you haven't got to worry about returning a rented dress either, with red wine down the front if you got a bit carried away at the open bar. Kevin, give us the details again where we can find out more about Raisin and the help that you're going to get people to save to put away that money for that golden day.
Yeah, so our website is raisin, raisin.co.uk.
Well, savings expert from Raisin, Kevin Manford, and the one and only David Emanuel. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jason.
Mostly Autumn have been playing festivals, and as we speak, we find Brian and Olivia in the back of their van, which is travelling them around the country to all the events that are taking place, and they're here for a bit of an after about their current music. Hello.
Hello there.
Hi.
Right, so first of all, give us the background to Mostly Autumn, please.
Well, Mostly Autumn's been like a project, a band that's been going about 25 years, sort of seriously, and it's just music. Music that's sort of about life and nature that inspires us and things. It's just been, you can't say it in 2 minutes, but it's just been a band that's very real, and we've been doing that like professionally and playing that everywhere.
That is all we can ask for, really, isn't it? And a chance to share music, and some awesome music it is too. So, how do you describe the sound, and how do you bring that to the stage compared to your recorded work?
Ooh, pastoral, maybe.
It's like heavy at times, beautiful at times, intense, very heartfelt, very honest. In the studio, we put down it as close as we can, but live it comes across maybe even more powerful, I guess. it was born more as a live thing than a studio thing. I think really at the end of the day, it's a live experience. But obviously you need to record albums to put it down there for people to get.
So Skin of Mankind's a track we're going to take a listen to in a short while's time. And so the studio version of this I've heard is we've got tambourines, we've got big piano sounds and a load of other stuff going on. It's a very sort of busy, impactful sound, isn't it?
Yeah, it's it's a riff, that came out, and it's got echoes of a western sort of sound to it, and almost a gypsy sound, but it was based on a riff. And the album itself, when you hear the album, it's a concept of stuff we wrote about the time going through the pandemic, and we sort of logged it into music, if you like, because all the other inspiration had disappeared at that time. So the album, Skin of Mankind, is a third track in on the album, and it's a little bit like a part of the journey which the album is. And it sounds like it is because it just came out like that.
But I mean, it sounds awesome, and say it is something which you said is different the way you do it on stage. But I should think you're still going to have everybody bouncing in that crowd, and I'm sure the festival scene has been quite odd, singing about a time when you couldn't be together in front of a load of people who are clearly having a great time of togetherness.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, well, yeah, absolutely. It was amazing to be playing again after 18 months. Like, the vibe in the crowd and with the bands was amazing. It's something else, something like you've never experienced in a way, like resetting it all.
And what's it like being back in the tour vehicle? As I say, as we speak, you've got the rest of the camper van. You're home when these things go on. I'm sure at some point, even though I know you were in Travelodge last night. But how do you make that sort of life on the road thing work?
Oh, it's just amazing, isn't it? Yeah.
It's just a really good crack. It's part of it all. Like, there's a great bunch of people in the band and crew, and we just enjoy going around in different places. The crack you have in the Travelodge car park with loads of booze and stuff, and then going and doing the gigs, and everything that goes with it. It's just amazing to be doing it again. It really is. It's really strange, really good, amazing.
Grant, you must feel really privileged. I know the audience are privileged too to hear the sound that you're making. And how many of you are there that bring all this together?
When we play live, there's 7 of us on the stage. 7 create the sounds. We're a noisy lot.
Absolutely, but good noise, which is what counts. And but very well behaved when you hit the hotels. I'm sure that's the case.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, very quiet.
Okay, so what have we got going forward and what have we got on the socials? How do people find it? Because 25 years ago when this all started, there was no socials. It was purely hard work and graft in real life. These days, the graft is in a different place, isn't it?
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we've got the main website, haven't we, which is mostly-autumn.com. That has the details of all the gigs coming forwards. And then we're on all the usual social sites, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, so people can find us on there as well. But we've got HRH gigs coming up in a couple of weeks.
Yeah, we've got a gig in Shepherd's Bush Empire and then in O2 in Sheffield coming up. There's obviously not as many gigs as there would have been because everything's been so uncertain, but they're starting to come in again now. So
we're at the Robin 2 on the 28th of November.
So it'd be great to have you in the Midlands for that one. That's going to be awesome. Again, the sort of venue which I think is going to absolutely suit your sound as well, because it's big enough to cope with the audience, but still close enough that you actually feel part of it. Because I'm often gigs down there, and you feel like an extension of the band. And I think that's again, it's sort of a family feel to your music, isn't it?
Definitely, yeah. It's definitely a fantastic venue. It's that one. We love playing there. It's brilliant.
It's intimacy, as you say. There's something about that sort of size of gig, this sort of club gig like that, where it's blood, sweat, and emotion, and you're all part of it. The bigger gigs, sometimes you do big gigs, you are slightly detached from it all. It's a different experience, but I do really enjoy them. But we all do really enjoy that sort of thing, especially the Robin 2. It's a good gig.
Yeah, you'll still have the best part of 1,000 people in there, absolutely rocking the night away, which is absolutely awesome, and it's going to be a good one. I am loving the sound. So we've got the whole album, which is out there, people can get now. So how do we do that one as well?
Well, the new album is only on a limited edition at the minute, but the general release in shops and on iTunes and everything is the 24th of September. So that's when they can get that, right?
Okay.
There is a limited edition that they can go to the website, but I think it's more or less sold out, so they'd have to be very, very quick. You see, we send a few thousand out there as a double, and that's a limited edition. Then the single disc goes out to the people, to the shops of Europe and wherever in the world,
Yeah, and also it will be available at gigs and things as well, I am sure.
Yeah.
So the important bit is getting and seeing you guys live, because clearly you're a live band. That's how it works. Mostly autumn, out there on the road. Robin 2 coming up in November. Check out the Robin's website for that one and get your tickets that way. But of course, get online and see what else is happening in the world of these kind of mad musicians who doing crazy stuff and entertaining as you head around the UK. Absolutely brilliant. Loving the whole concept of it. Keep up the good work. Here's to another 25 years. Brian and Olivia, thank you for joining us.
Thank you, mate.
Thank you so much. Cheers, Jason.
With Monday's release of Flatland, a challenging story in a different world, certainly to what we're used to here. And then on top of that, you've got an interesting foreign language film in some ways too. To tell us more, I'm joined now by writer and director Jenna Bass. Good afternoon.
Hi, thanks for having me.
Well, good to talk to you. So tell me a bit more about the setting to begin with.
Sure. So the film is set in the Karoo region of South Africa, which is in the middle of the country, and it's the very dry, semi-desert region with the mostly Afrikaans speaking population. And it's been the kind of setting of a lot of literature and a lot of storytelling in South Africa, and also quite a lot of films as well. But I think it's a kind of region that holds a lot of fascination for people. It's almost like kind of a mythical kind of sense to it. So I think you see that in the film.
But amazing scenery and backdrops, and it looks amazing. And I think that makes some of the things that we see in front of those backdrops more harrowing when it comes to telling the story.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's there's a lot of things that are, I suppose, very difficult and challenging and raw about the story. But I think that's what what drew me to the Western in the first place, is that it, however you interpret that genre, it very often has that very stark backdrop on which human nature does kind of take on a more extreme quality. And so I think that's for me something that's very much drew me to the landscape to tell this particular story in this genre.
Well, billed as a portrait of womanhood in a hostile land, certainly it leaves no holds barred when it comes to telling this story, with two friends exploring and experiencing a huge amount in the space of the film itself.
Yeah, that's true. They go through a lot. Yeah, I know. I think in a lot of ways, I think the film, it's very like with the Western, again, with that genre, and exploring it from the perspective of these female characters. I really wanted to give women a chance to experience all the kind of extremes of the Western that you would usually see, happening to male characters in that genre. So many of the Westerns I watched when I was researching for the film, are about men, and I wanted to see what women would do in very frequently violent and difficult, challenging situations of violence or deprivation, and really put them through the same kinds of very brutal physical challenges, which or in a way, take on a whole different light in the kind of context of South Africa and when it is women. So I really wanted to put them through these challenges that just as much as men would be in that genre.
I mean, with the challenges from the male characters on, say, the female police officer in the one scene in the film, and they are not accepting of women in authority, quite clearly, and there is a level of lack of respect there, which in some ways is shown in different ways throughout the piece.
Absolutely. I mean, we have a very kind of publicly acknowledged, huge pandemic of gender-based violence in South Africa. So it's a very, very big topic of conversation, where this very rampant, violent violence towards women, where that comes from, and why it's particularly so extreme here. And so it's not, I suppose what the film does is that it doesn't only look at it from that perspective of physical violence, but also just microaggressions and lack of respect, and the kind of hypocrisy that our country has in terms of we love and we celebrate women. In fact, we're actually in Women's Month at the moment here, and yet that we have this huge problem with violence and prejudice towards women. So yeah, it's a very, very big topic here.
Yeah, certainly outwardly, in the UK, we would see the women of South Africa as a celebration of colour and of art when it comes down to what we get exported to us. But this clearly is showing the rather gritty, different side of that, and a reality which is quite harsh, and even down to the treatment of one of your characters when they're pregnant.
Yeah. No, I definitely. I mean, I think I'm always interested with the perceptions of South Africa that kind of, as you say, get exported, because I do feel like we have a very successfully exported public image of what our country is and where we're at, and that isn't just doesn't just relate to women. It also in terms of where we're at with race and equality and the unity of the nation, this rainbow nation, and so which the film very much speaks to as well. And isn't about necessarily trashing those ideas, but kind of, showing that, as much as we want to be in this place where everybody gets along and everybody treats everyone with respect, we absolutely aren't, and we have a long way to go to get there.
But a kind of world that runs in parallel with the world that we see.
Yeah, it's and it's like, I suppose I'm always interested in people's, like dreams and their ideals of what they want life to be like and what they think life should be like. And I think the characters in this film are, they're all victims of their own ideals, or the ideals that they've been taught they should have in terms of what love should be like, what romance should be like. Beauty is the character that she throws away her whole life, her whole professional life, for this version of romance that she believes that she must have with this man who, clearly is not, kind of up for that. And and Poppy as well has also kind of got an idea of like, this is what I want my life to be like. I want to be on TV. I want to be famous. I want to be with this guy who's a trucker. It's so romantic. But and they're all kind of chasing after these ideals that aren't really going to make them happy and aren't necessarily even realistic. And I think that it's a mirror of where we are as a country, is that we aren't necessarily being realistic about the ideals we have for our nation, and how we, it's not a magic wand that we can just wave and fix all these problems. We kind of have to be more realistic and kind of assess where we're at and what's possible.
And with the Afrikaans language that we have in there, and this particular dialect of it, and what I think is interesting for us as well is the bits of English that pop up in there. Now, you probably don't notice that, but I do, because I'm reading the subtitles to follow the majority of what's going on, and then suddenly there's bits I recognise. And the way in which you've written it, obviously you focus on that when you wrote it, so I'm not giving you credit there really, but it is. It's an interesting view of it, because when we talk about South Africans, we know the accent, we know the voice that the people have, and it's interesting hearing it in Afrikaans and that English Afrikaans mix.
Yeah, no, I mean, there's a lot of very interesting like undertones that involve language in the film, and Afrikaans in particular. But even when it comes to Afrikaans, there's a lot of different kinds of Afrikaans that are spoken in the film, and which represents the fact that Afrikaans isn't just one language, and it's a very politicized language here. And you have scenes where Beauty's a character whose first language is not Afrikaans, so she kind of speaks it under duress, and she speaks it to show respect to her former boss Jaap, who she's got a lot of respect for. But when it comes to speaking to his son, who she doesn't respect, she just refuses to speak it, because it's we could have a whole long other conversation about the kind of history of Afrikaans in this country, but there's a lot of kind of undertones that the language has, and her choice to speak or not to speak Afrikaans kind of has a lot of meaning to it.
But again, this is another chance to export something internationally and give a different view, but not necessarily one that's intended to be critical, as you say, but a different view of a country that in some ways we feel we know, from the end of apartheid, which came about during my lifetime, and the colonialism that goes a long time before.
Yes, no, it's certainly. I found it really fascinating how, showing this film internationally and seeing what people think. And I had a lot of people, especially in Europe, actually, who'll say to me, like, I've been to South Africa, or I've been to Africa, more generally speaking, and this is not the version of South Africa that I'm used to, or like, I didn't think that this isn't what South Africa looks like. And my answer to that is always like, it's a huge country with so much diversity. Like, you can't even expect even our country to be homogenous, let alone the whole continent. And also, Flatland is absolutely not a realistic portrayal of South Africa. It's kind of got a cartoonish quality to it. I mean, and that's intentional. Like, we wanted it to be a Western with all the kind of extremities of that genre, and it's not a absolute like realistic authentic portrayal. It's a movie, and I think if you want to like learn more about South Africa, like, this is one film to watch. Watch more and learn more about the country, but it's not this one film that's going to teach you everything about what the country is like.
You're not definitively the whole thing, but it's like when we see any gangster movie anywhere, we see this coming out of the likes of London, a London gangster movie. We know that's not the London we go and see when we go and see a movie in the West End. It's not the South Africa you would see if you go to a tourist destination, but we know that these things exist, and this is the South African take effectively on the same sort of things as we might see created in movies elsewhere. And again, it gives a very different flavour, and particularly taking the female perspective and the very real way in which there is a lack of respect to these characters, which again is mirrored in parts, not all of society.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's a lot of the film, despite the fact that it's it's obviously very it's very melodramatic and it's quite extreme. Like, a lot of it is based on my own life in weird ways. Like, I mean, I've never been a pregnant kind of cocaine addicted alcoholic teenager, but there's a lot of the ways in which they experience the world and they experience men and they experience kind of society that I feel very connected to. And so as much as it is, completely fictional and kind of ridiculous at times, it's just also something that I feel very close to and that I can kind of sincerely kind of like put out there as something that I feel is real.
Well, premiering on Bohemia Euphoria and via digital as well. Flatland is available to watch as of Monday, and it is going to be, I think, certainly an education, but an education based on a world where you can see a snapshot of parts, but not all of a nation, which we probably think we know, but don't.
Great, thank you. I hope everyone gets to see it, and thank you so much for the chat. It was really great.
Right, from director Jenna Bass, thank you for joining us.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for this week. Thank you so much for joining me. Back with episode 636 next week. I hope to have you along then. Ta-ra for now.
Goodbye from the milk bar. Goodbye from the milk bar. Goodbye from the milk bar. Goodbye from the milk bar, yeah. Goodbye from the milk bar, yeah.